The views and opinions expressed on the Cap are those of the hosts. They do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of OldMilk Media. Any opinions stated aren't intended to offend anyone. On this episode of the Cap Podcast, we react to Why Lawed by NxWorries. Welcome back. This is episode 510 of your critical but accurate tour through hip hop, the Cap Podcast. We are your tour guides. I am Nate Sperlin. That is Taylor McLeod. Thank you for tuning in on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you might be tuning in. Feel free to go ahead and join the conversation by leaving a comment, liking this video, subscribing to the channel, sharing with your friends. All that helps, and we are thankful for the help. That being said, Taylor, how are you doing today?
Well, I complained a little bit at the beginning of the other episode, and I'm going to complain again. I had that Syracuse hat on for our last episode, right? Because of the place that really, this podcast wouldn't be happening if it weren't for that school, right?
That is true.
But man, it was hurting my head so bad with the headphones on over it, I had to take it off. I don't know what it was. It was like there was like right where the headphone sits, it was just like that whole part is just killing me.
So what you're saying is that you are going through a divorce with your hat, which is why this makes this album that we're about to talk about so relatable to you, because you're going through a divorce with your Syracuse hat.
Man, I don't know if relatable is the right word. I haven't, divorce is divorce, but sure.
All right, let's get into it. On this episode of the Cap Podcast, we are talking about Why Lawed by NxWorries, which is a collaboration between Anderson .Paak and the producer Knxwledge. The album is 19 tracks long, 44 minutes long, featuring Dave Chappelle, Thundercat, Her, Snoop Dogg, October London, Ray Khalil twice, Charlie Wilson, The Last Artful Dodger, and Earl Sweatshirt. Once again, you can join the conversation by leaving your comments on Why Lawed in the comments below. That being said, Taylor, what is your first reaction to Why Lawed?
Well, you already touched on it a little bit. Obviously, this is a breakup album, right? This is a big time breakup album, and more specifically, a divorce album. But when you have two artists here, like Anderson .Paak and Knxwledge, who I would say probably bring the best out of each other, and they have for a long time, they're so comfortable making music together that this like relatively uncomfortable subject is very comfortable. And man, this is like the smoothest divorce album. I don't know if you've ever heard a divorce album this smooth, but this is like silk, and it's just about, sad, heavy subject matter. It's not a super sad album, but you know what I mean? It's like what we're dealing with, and you don't feel like that. Like if you were just listening to it, not really like paying attention to the words, you'd be like, damn, they're having a great time. And then it's like, then you like listen and you're like, oh my God, he's going through it.
It's kind of like Juice WRLD's music, where like you could like two dimensions to it. Like if you're sad, you could listen to this and it'd be like sad with Anderson .Paak. But if you're like not sad and you just want to chill, you could just like tune out Anderson .Paak and listen to the production from Knxwledge. So I think that's a good comparison.
And even his voice, he just has like a natural like happiness to how he sing, like a natural joy. And because you can see him like smiling, right? Because like that's just one of his biggest things. He's got maybe the best smile in the game, honestly. I think he's right up there. So
all right. So my first reaction, we've been talking about packaging a lot. I think the packaging on this album is really great as well. The title is literally Why Lawed? Like, why is this happening to me? Why am I going through a divorce right now? So I think that's brilliant titling of the album. The cover art within itself, I think, is really genius in a way. Like if you're looking at it, it looks depressing. Like there's nothing there. It's basically all black. But if you look carefully enough, like towards the middle, there's two goats there, and I believe that's symbolizing Anderson .Paak and Knxwledge. And I think that overall what that means is that, or what it symbolizes is that basically just because Anderson .Paak is going through a rough time doesn't mean that he's going to doubt the music ability of himself or Knxwledge, or doubt himself or Knxwledge. So I think that's a very powerful message in the album cover. Maybe I'm just projecting my own feelings onto it, but either way, great album cover. That being said, listening to this album, first listening to it, really when I get to track 3 or track 4, Keeper, track 4, when I get to that track, my first thought was, because I'm not really like, I know of Anderson .Paak, I like his features, but I'm not like deep into Anderson .Paak to where like I know everything going on with his life. So I'm listening to this album, and my first thought is he going through relationship issues? And then I asked the chat, I Google it, and he's going through a divorce since January. So it seems like he took all that emotion from going through this divorce and just packed it into this album. And I think that that is the very definition of what an artist is supposed to do. An artist is supposed to go through something, go through an experience, take all the emotion and take all the feelings and thoughts that they have about that experience, and put it together to make something relatable for us, people who aren't artistically inclined. So I think that he does a really good job of that. Um, I also think that the seamlessness between the transitions from song to song really make this album more cohesive. The track lengths are varying. You start off with Dave Chappelle, which is like 50 seconds, and then you have a minute and 36, minute 30 long track, and then you have a 2 minute and 47 minute long track. Then you have a 4 minute track, and then you have a minute, like 2 minute, just under 2 minute track, and then you have like a 54 second track. And that's just the first six. Like toward the end, we really start getting like we get like three tracks that are like barely a minute and a half long. Between tracks 15 and tracks 17. And then the end is just like a interlude of sorts. So the track listing here, I think that because of the differing lengths between songs, the transitions are really, really important. And I think that Knowledge knocks that on the head. I also think that his production throughout is just great. Like he lays a perfect foundation for Anderson .Paak to navigate between the rapping and the singing that he's known for. And I also like the fact that there are tracks such as Here I Am or Even More, where it's just Knowledge making a beat or having that beat on display with no vocals over it, showing that Knowledge has that the production ability of Knowledge. So Knowledge, the producer, getting that spotlight as well, is also very important and also noble of Anderson .Paak, especially since we know historically producers have been mistreated by rappers or just by artists. So it's just nice to see that be on full, that the reversal of that, the appreciation of the producer being on full display here.
Yeah, and I think this album, it's one of those albums where you can really, really appreciate the relationship between, I won't say rapper because Anderson .Paak isn't just a rapper, so we can just say vocalist right here.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like vocalist and producer, where you can tell when those two positions are, they're actually very comfortable working with each other, because like for an album like this to be completely produced by one person, right? That producer has to be like completely like in tune with how that other person's feeling and being able to kind of like roll out that carpet for them to walk along, or showing them the path, or you know what I mean? Like it's, I mean, I think it speaks a lot to their musical relationship, that like Knowledge can produce a whole album and have every song be able to like kind of like set the scene for Anderson .Paak to, whether it's kind of like tongue in cheek or playful, or whether it is a little heavier, whether it's like super sad or super like, man, you know what I mean? It is what it is, right? Like Knowledge at every turn in this album, he just it there's just such a perfect understanding of what emotion is supposed to be conveyed there. And you're right. You're right. Like the production throughout this is unbelievable, and it's there's a nice variety of
Mhm.
production as well. And I think the song lengths go into that. I think the sonics, I think the different sounds kind of, I think sometimes genre can be thrown around a little too much, but there's definitely like different pockets of music throughout this album. And for one producer to accomplish all of that is very impressive. And I think for one producer to do that, you know, and then one main vocalist, and then you have, I mean, I think all the features fit pretty perfectly throughout. Like
Yeah.
there isn't one of them that, you know, I look at and I'm like, ah, I could do without that. And this is the difference between artists who work with each other, because like they have that real life relationship, and then you have like, you know, a Silk Sonic, where it was like Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak are obviously, you know, two super talented musicians, but they're also great entertainers. And that, to
Mhm.
me, that was an entertainment album, right? This is like a real deal like album, right? It's the adults are in the room, as we've been saying for this whole year, right? This is a perfect example of that. And man, it is just, it's so smooth. And I would like the, it's just, you can just put it on from the beginning and just like really, really either like lock in with it, or just play it, and like you have that. It's just a nice, it's a nice listen, man. Like I listened to it walking around like early this morning around town. I went out at like 6:30 this morning, played the whole album walking around town. I was like, yeah, this is perfect for that. And I can't wait until I get back to the East Coast. I can, play it in the car driving around, like, especially because it'll be summertime. Like, it's just good. Like, it's, sometimes there's not much more to say besides like, man, this is a good album.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also think that this is an album that's made to be performed as well. There's a
Yeah.
lot of um sometimes listening to production, you can't really tell if instruments are real or not, or instruments are supposed to be real or not. And here you can tell that just knowing Anderson .Paak and the way that he performs in the first place, and having knowledge be so closely in tune with what Anderson .Paak usually does with his music, you would hope that there's a lot of natural sounding instruments throughout this production, and there is a lot of natural sounding instruments throughout the production. So I'm excited to see how Anderson .Paak is able to translate this to his live performances, which is, I would argue, probably the biggest reason why he has fans in the first place.
Yeah, well, this is a great place for us to put a little Easter egg to see if someone's listening or not, because, you know, one of our close friends has been waiting for this album forever,
Forever.
right? Talking about it forever. And this is an Easter egg because I want to see, man, because this guy was begging us to talk about this album. We didn't know if we were going to, so let's see. This right here, what's the timestamp? I don't even know if you and I can see it. But this right here, this little Easter egg to see if this is really getting listened to, or if all those they're empty begging or not. You know what I mean? Because if it was empty begging, then I mean, I'm glad we're talking about it for you and I, right? And the
Yeah.
people who tune in. But for that one person, I am curious to see if they're actually locked in the way they say they are, and if the complaints about other episodes are real or not.
No, 1000%. I don't want to hear another complaint because this is his dream realized that we're talking about his favorite artist. But let's get to the song by song. The first song I want to talk about is Keeper. There are a lot of the album is interesting lyrically because it's not really like a story as some albums would be. Like it's kind of like it's emotion. Like it's like sometimes he's thinking about what I could have done to keep her. Sometimes he's thinking about I have all this stuff, why didn't it work? And then other times he's reminiscing about like when the times were good. And then there are other times where he's trying to move on. I think Keep Her is an example of him feeling like I just think it's about him rapping about how his money isn't enough to keep his girl and how she's opting to pack her bags and explore her options instead of giving Anderson .Paak the closure that he wants. So that was interesting to me. There are other songs where, like for example, Where I Go, that's more about like moving on, where like he's talking about, and her is also talking singing about the heartbreak that they're going through and still hoping to keep it cordial between themselves and their exes.
Yeah.
And then you have Daydreaming where he seems to be reminiscing about the girl that was once his, or like the time that he knew that his girl would be his for however long that was. Um, Quick note about Daydreaming before I pass it back to you. I think Tizo Touchdown would have been a great feature on that song.
Yeah. Man, I think yeah, Tizo would fit perfectly, within the context of this album too, just
Mhm.
like what he does as an artist. Man, I think there's a lot of points throughout this album, and this to me is definitely more of like an album listen where I'm putting it on from start to finish. And so sometimes albums like that are hard for me to distinguish where things happen because I know I'm going to listen to the whole thing through. But I think like whether it's lyrics or like a little skit, I think there's so many like superhuman elements to this album. Like
Mhm.
when he's like talking to his friend about it, and his friend's like, "Hang on, y'all broke up?" And he goes, "I told you about this." And he's like, "You're supposed to make me feel good, make me feel warm, right?" And it's like little stuff like that, or like when he's like, "Oh, it looks like I'm doing all this like big shit, but really I'm just like at home, like scrolling on your Instagram, seeing what's going on, hoping your friends are taking these pictures of you on vacation, and it's not like, some other guy pretty much." So I think there's like so many moments, and this is where Anderson .Paak being like the entertainer and the comedian he is,
Mhm.
man, he's really like one of a kind. The way he can like weave all those things in between and keep it light, but also have it be like, damn, when you like really listen to it, you're like, damn, this is like incredible. Um, I mean, my favorite feature on the whole project, and you'll know why, is easily her on Where I Go.
Mhm.
Listen to that song more than any other songs. Like, like that one's crazy. And then like there's like little things, man, like the little Snoop interlude where he's
Yeah.
like, like, oh, people say it's like the worst thing for a man to go home to an empty bed. And he's like, it's actually worse when she changes the lock and throws all your clothes out. You got nowhere to go. Like, little stuff like that, man. It's just the whole thing is so well put together. And it's just like, man, it's like we talk about it a lot, but it's just superhuman. Like this whole album,
Hmm.
like all these little moments of like when he's like, oh yeah, I have this, like, I'm dating this new girl, but she's like, you know what I mean, and she looks good, but what does he say? She's dumb as a brick and her music
Yeah.
taste sucks. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, yo, like, he's like, it starts off where he's like, yeah, I'm like, it starts off like a little flex kind of, and then he's like, but it's not really that good. You know what I mean? And like,
She's still not
there's,
her.
yeah, I know exactly. There's so many moments here like that where it's just he's just such like an incredible artist in that way
Mhm.
where he can just hit all the real emotions, and that's the reason why something like this is going to keep getting played. It's not just because of the music, it's not just because of the production, it's not just because I already liked Anderson .Paak. It's because I'm listening to it and I'm like walking around town, no one's out there at 6:30 in the morning. I'm like laughing out loud to myself because I'm like, damn, like he's really talking that talk right now. And then there's other moments here, like Earl Sweatshirt, right? Of course, it's right at the end. We get this like hilarious album, and then Earl comes through just doing his thing. Because I mean, he's funny too, but he's definitely rapping on this.
Mhm.
Like he's spitting, and then it's like, and it's all those like emotions of how to handle something like this, and it's like it just hits on it all so perfectly, so perfectly. Really, the only feature that I didn't like, the only song I really don't like is like the Never remix with Charlie Wilson, because like that feels like a song like that
Mhm.
feels like a and not just like part of the album. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm trying to, I don't know exactly
It
what I'm
kind of it
trying to
kind of
say.
feels like it's a bit too short. Like it
A
should have
bit
been
too
developed
short,
more.
and it's almost like, oh, like, but again, I was gonna say it almost feels like it's trying too hard, but
Hmm.
I think that's part of it too,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like, you're like, all right, whatever, like, yeah, and like, no, I'm gonna come back out and I'm gonna, do it this way, and then it's, it's just I don't use the word perfect with albums a lot because I don't know if there is a perfect album, but like
Hmm.
for what this album is, especially like in the way it sounds going into the summer, man, it is pretty close to perfect. Like, you playing it and you're like laughing and you're like, damn, like he's really saying something, and then you're laughing again. It just like brings you on this like, I wouldn't say roller coaster of emotions, but it's kind of like a wave of emotions.
Yeah. It's not like a daunting roller coaster where it takes you up like 400 feet
Exactly.
up
It's
and
that it's
it's
that
like,
small one. It's that
yeah,
small one for kids that
yeah.
it's like, it'll be like a little dragon and
Just
it
goes
has
around
like
it. It's
one
like
little,
one
yeah, and
loop and it's like
yeah,
it
exactly.
just keeps
That's
going
what I'm
around and
saying.
around.
And you're like, I could do this all day.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
I there is some I think one song that may be a little overshadowed here is From Here, and I think that in terms of analogy is probably the strongest song. What I'm getting from it is that he's comparing his relationship to like closing time at the club where the lights are starting to come on, and like you're trying to look for someone to go home with, and he kind of like in the first verse he's like how could you leave me here all alone, and he's talking about him being in this club trying to like get someone to go home with, but really he's talking about his relationship. So I found that to be a good analogy, but then on the second verse he takes it further by now he's talking about the girl leaving him and him crying in his car in the aftermath, and I'm pretty sure he's not crying over some random girl that he met at like midnight and
Yeah.
it's 2 a.m and he's crying because she wanted to go home with him. I think he's talking about his relationship there, but I think that the analogy just like built into that song makes that song one of my favorites. I like Here I Am as well. I think it's funny hearing Pac's uh his mother's reaction to hearing the divorce. And then him
Yeah.
also talking about like him not appreciating his wife until the marriage is over, and like just basically like the aftermath of the divorce, like him like saying, I believe there's a line about like wherever I go places people see you with me, so they always ask me about you, and it's like I have nothing to say about you anymore because I'm divorcing you and people don't
Yeah,
really
yo, and then he's like, they ask, what the fuck did you do?
his mom was like, how can you mess a good thing up? And it's like, dang,
Yeah.
like from your old
I
mom,
yo,
that's crazy.
did you catch it? I'm sure you did. When she's like, call me when you get back from the Dodger game. I was
I
like,
saw
that's for
that.
me and Nate. Hell yeah.
I almost wore my Dodgers jersey because of it. Honestly,
Yeah,
I really
no,
almost
man,
did. I quick
that was
nitpick
so funny.
because I'm pretty sure that song is either she used or more of it, but this is just me being weird in my brain. There's a feature here called The Last Artful Dodger. Would have been hilarious if the song with that feature came immediately after his mom talking, asking
Yeah.
him to call him back after the Dodgers game. But go Mama Paak and those Dodgers
Yo,
because I hope she's enjoying Shohei
do you
Ohtani anyway.
do you like rom-coms?
Not really. I'm more of a cartoon guy or an action guy, if anything.
This You said you want to see this performed, and it's not like a one linear story.
Hmm.
This would be so funny, man, as like a pretty much a rom-com or like a comedy movie. Like,
Like a Broadway play type thing, and you
yeah,
have
man,
Anderson
like,
.Paak just like on the drums, like singing, and
yeah,
okay, okay, we're
it's
cooking.
just this like I'm glad you brought up the From Here where he's just in his car after
Hmm.
the club, right? And it's like there's so many visuals on this, and there's so much that it's like it's the type of music and it's catchy that it'll keep you coming back because you want to hear
Hmm.
the music. But man, like to get me to really laugh during an album is
Yeah.
like it's a big deal. Like for me to be like, damn, this is like this hits all the emotions, but it's like it's not like all the emotions where it's like, oh yeah, like now I'm I'm turned up, I'm flexing, but I'm also like kind of like down, you know what I mean? It's like no, it's like literally like all the super like the human emotions that you feel, not like the all right, I know what to expect from this. It's just man, like I would love to see this as like a not maybe not this album specifically, but like a movie or a TV show that's
Yeah.
like this thing. It'd be hilarious. It'd be hilarious, and it like hits all the points that it's like it's just man.
I think the most realistic fruition of that would be I mean I'm not sure of Anderson .Paak's intention with the music videos on this album, but I think if you turn this into like a complete visual album, I think that this makes this album like really like this album's already strong, but I think that this makes this album if he is able to turn this into a visual album, it makes it infinitely more stronger and it might even stand like the test of years upon years because
Because you know he has you money, right? He talks
yeah.
about it through here, but like on From Here, I'm thinking of him like getting in his like '98 Honda Civic after the club. You know what I mean? Like not getting into something crazy, but getting into like something like older or like just real regular and being like, damn, like there's just yeah, man, it's refreshing to have an album that like you kind of get to use your imagination with.
Hmm.
And it's like you get to like kind of paint that like picture that movie for yourself. And it's just like I'm sure you've seen it on Twitter. It's like, man, he's a real yearner.
Hmm.
Like he's really yearning all over
Oh,
this project. Like
yeah. Someone was
he's
saying he there was like a meme of this guy on his knees when he sees his wife with someone else, like begging
oh
her to
yeah,
come
yeah,
back.
yeah.
And they're like, that's basically this album.
That picture, yeah, it's from like the 50s. It's a guy on his knees at the courthouse.
Please come back. That's like there's just so many different references and so many different layers to this album as far as pop culture goes. Like I just think that this is a really, really good album. I mean, the only song that I think is like serious is Walk On By, and that's the second to last track because the last track is like basically like an interlude. But like there, you have Anderson .Paak talking about survivor's guilt. And then you have Earl Sweatshirt kind of also talking about survivor's guilt, but more so about
Yeah.
like the how they were like him and his friend and like how their lives ended up going down different paths. And then Ray Khalil is just asking for help. Like he's just like, yo, like someone help me. Like I feel alone. Like nobody's here. Nobody cares. Like help me. I think that um that verse, the Ray Khalil verse, more than anything else, probably is the best at encapsulating. I mean, I've never been through divorce. I hope to never be through divorce or never have to go through that. But I would imagine that like the idea of like, yo, everybody's watching the spectacle that I'm in and nobody's gonna help me. Like I think that is probably the most prevalent feeling going through something like that.
Yeah, I mean, and then me and you have a, cut 30 to 40 minute podcast laughing at it because we're like, damn, this is hilarious. And then you have that last song that's like, yeah, it is funny, man, but it is real at the same
This is
time.
serious. I'm really sad right now, bro. It's
Yeah.
like the strong friend type thing.
Yeah,
One last
right.
thing before we try to get out of here. going back to like us talking about like how visual this album is, I think that one thing that makes it better, at least for me, is us talking about the song Justin on the Vince Staples album, because I remember like I texted you like a week ago, like towards the end where he's like meeting this guy that like he didn't know was coming to the house, and like you could just picture it all over Vince's face. He's just like super angry and he's like trying to hold it in, and he's like, nice to meet you too. Like
Yeah.
that was like the first start of us getting like this like kind of like director's cut of an album, like a visual director's cut of an album. And to listen to this, like this is really a treat to listen to after going through that experience.
Yeah, man.
Anyway,
Yo, these funny guys from California, they know
yeah.
how to like paint that
Honestly,
picture for
Kendrick
us.
too, because Kendrick has been
Yeah.
really funny
Oh, I
recently. Like
know. Like they're
that's
all
three.
like they
Yeah.
all give us. I mean, Blue Lips wasn't that funny.
Nah, it wasn't that funny.
Blue Lips, Blue Lips
No.
was pretty like serious.
For Schoolboy Q's comedy chops, we have to go to like his videos with Mac Miller and stuff,
Right.
and
Yeah,
where they're just
exactly.
interacting with each
I
other.
was
It's like,
thinking like
yeah.
Blue Lips was kind of, then I like thought about it more. I was like, it really wasn't
No,
that
it
funny.
wasn't.
Yeah.
If you made it this far, go ahead and comment your favorite song on this album. That being said, Taylor, what is your expectation for playback value of this album?
Playback value for me, this is staying in rotation, right? This right up there with the Vince Staples album with Blue Lips.
Mhm.
Not everything has to be funny, but those three albums, and it is funny. They're all California albums, like are staying in rotation for the rest of this year, and they'll stay in rotation for longer. Like this one, this is really special to me, and it's awesome to listen to. So for me, I would say indefinite on playback value. Objectively, we know our man Bobby's going to be playing this forever, right?
Yeah.
So I'll give it a forever for him as well. I don't know. I mean, and I'm interested to see it's hard for me to tell because I don't know like if this is going to reach like a huge a massive audience to
Mhm.
keep it alive. But I think that for people who like it, it's going to stay alive. So I'm more interested to hear what you have to say because like I can't really, I don't have a good feel for it.
Yeah. Well, subjectively for me, I think that this could go for at least a month, maybe longer. But objectively, which is what we're talking about, I feel like it's weird. Like I think we this has been a very very big music weekend. Like you have outside of hip hop, you have Normani dropping her debut album, and I saw a lot of buzz for that. Like and I saw a lot of buzz for the Don Toliver album as well. And it kind of felt like when I saw buzz for this album, it was more like a niche buzz, but like
Yeah.
a buzz, like a Vince Staples buzz, kind of like if you're a fan of this artist, you are excited, and there are plenty of fans of this artist who are excited. So I'm not sure, like similar to you, like I'm not sure how this does in terms of like the general overall genre. I guess like the first week sales will tell us. But for me, subjectively, I mean, this album sounds like it's supposed to be played during summer. Unfortunately, lots of people go through divorce. So there's a relatability in a lot of areas in this
Yeah.
album. So I would probably give it maybe 2 months.
Yeah. And
Um,
I think that if more people who probably don't even, they like might know who Anderson Paak is but don't listen to his music, right? I feel like there's a huge audience that if they gave it a chance, they would be like,
mhm.
oh, this is like, this is really good, but they probably unfortunately never will,
Yeah,
right? So that you lose out on a big part of that audience there.
yeah, I agree. Final thoughts?
Yeah, so my final thoughts, um there's nothing better to me than when a producer and a rapper, a producer and a vocalist are completely comfortable working with each other and they are in lockstep with each other, and that's what we have here. It's my favorite. I mean, they have a collective name, right? They're called NxWorries together. It's not just like
Yes.
Alchemist and Boldy James or Alchemist and this person. It's they
21 Savage,
literally
Metro Boomin.
right. They have a collective, right? They have a
Mhm.
their duo. So there's nothing better than that to me. And I think my overarching like main final thought is that it's so impressive to me that Knowledge can roll out the red carpet for Anderson Paak to navigate all these emotions and still have it come across as like great music, as funny, as emotional, as sad, as all these things, and to have a producer who can understand that feeling from an artist like that, it doesn't get better than that to me. So that's my main final thought. Um, Favorite tracks, Where I Go with her, Walk On By with Earl Sweatshirt, and then I really like She Used as well, or
Mhm.
She Used, however you want to put it.
Yeah. My final thought is is Knowledge's excellent production serves as a therapist for Anderson Paak to take the emotions he's been feeling and expressing and to express them in his typical soulful but relatable way. My top three tracks are number three, Daydreaming, number two, Keep Her, and number one, Walk On By. All right. This has been episode 510 of the Cat Podcast. Don't forget to leave your comment or opinion of Why Laud by No Worries in the comments below. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends. Follow Old Milk on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Old Milk Media. Check out oldmilk.co for more information. I'm Nate Sperlin. That is Taylor McLeod, and we will see you when hip hop tells us to. We are out. Thank you for watching.